welcome to the Kink Perspective. My name's Chris. I'm a psychotherapist and consultant. On today's show, I'm kind of excited to bring you this topic. I have touched base on it before. It's actually something I looked at when I was in school, first going through getting my second master's in psychology, and it's kind of what I started to formulate a basis on BDSM and like spirituality and religious aspects in nature of. Today, I'm going to be talking about religion and kink, more specifically, the use of religious iconography inside of BDSM. Now, before I kind of get in here and dive into this, first, I want to extend a really warm welcome to all of my new followers that are tuning in all over the world. I want to thank you for really joining me on this journey of exploration and discovery. It's been an incredible 2.5 years. And as I kind of explore this with you all, I really encourage everyone to, like, subscribe, invite your friends to listen. All of your support really helps me continue to bring this different subjects matters to you like this one. And if you really enjoy what I do, don't forget to rate me 5 stars on Spotify. It really does help others discover this podcast and allows me to keep it growing. Now, over the years, there's been a growing interest in exploring how religious symbols and imagery are incorporated into BDSM practices. Now, what draws individuals to integrate these elements of faith into their kink experiences? How do these symbolic acts shape the dynamics of power, submission, and transcendence within BDSM relationships and even our community? Well, that's what we're going to explore today. First, I want to kind of start out here with this whole ritual nature of BDSM and religion. I'm going to give you a lot of my perspectives, things I've drawn on, some people I've talked to in the community, and even some psychological insight into some of this phenomenon. Now, rituals are woven into the very essence of the human experience, serving as pathways to connection, meaning, transcendence. And now, in both BDSM and religious ceremonies and practices, rituals play a central role, providing participants with a sense of structure, order, and community. Now, for those of us who may have gone to church, we understand this when we're maybe getting in line for the Holy Sacrament, or we're, sipping the blood of Christ and all of these different things. But if you think about what we do inside of the BDSM lifestyle, we have orders and rituals and commandments and things we can do, positions and kneeling, and it's not unlike things where we're serving. We can see a parallel between serving the ultimate Dom, which would be God. And I'm going to kind of get into all of these things today because this is also semi-inspired by someone I'm working with. But there is a lot of power interwoven here inside of the iconography of religion and BDSM. Now, some of these religious ritualistic elements maybe at a first glance seem worlds apart. But if we really take a closer examination here, we find striking similarities in the way rituals are employed. Now, in BDSM, rituals can range from meticulous preparations of equipment to the negotiations of scenes and dynamics, or how we even greet each other. The rituals serve not only as a practical purpose, but to also serve as a symbolic act that establish boundaries. They reinforce the roles we are within, and they do deepen the emotional connections between those involved. Now, similarly, religious ceremonies are steeped in ritual. From the recitation of prayers to the performance of the sacraments, these rituals create a sacred space, and they mark the moments of significance and foster a sense of reverence and awe. Now, whether it's the lighting of candles, maybe the chanting of a hymn, or the sharing of a communion, each ritual here serves to deepen the participants' connection to the divine and, conversely, to each other. Now, when we're looking at how these are creating order and meaning within our community, these rituals also play a crucial role in creating order and meaning not only in BDSM, but in religious contexts as well. In BDSM lifestyle for us, rituals provide a framework within which each participant can explore their desires and boundaries safely. We are well aware of this. We know this is why we come to this community, to explore our deepest erotic fantasies and desires. But through these connections, through these ritualistic practices, they establish a sense of predictability and control in an otherwise unpredictable and chaotic world that we all inhabit. Now, furthermore, rituals can imbue BDSM activities with a sense of significance and purpose, elevating them beyond the mere physical acts to profound experiences of intimacy and connection. And similarly, in religious context, when we're looking at this, rituals serve as a means of making sense to the world and our place within it. They do offer a framework of understanding the mysteries of existence and provide a sense of continuity and tradition across generations and cultures. And moreover, rituals create a sense of belonging and community spirit, and they bring individuals together in a shared experience of worship and devotion. So, why is religious iconography used in BDSM? Now, I have some theories. So bear with me. Some of this here, I'm going to give you some personalized perspectives, and I'm going to share at the end some of my final thoughts with how I sort of view a lot of this. When we look at the symbolism and power of these things, religious symbols wield immense psychological and cultural power, and they evoke deep-seated emotions and associations within people. When integrated into BDSM practices, these symbols take on definitely a new dimension. They infuse scenes with a sense of transcendence, reverence, penance, love, devotion. The psychological impact here of these symbols lies in their ability to tap into primal archetypes and collective unconscious. And they really do amplify sensations of submission, dominance, sacredness. Participants may find themselves drawn to these symbols as a means of exploring aspects of themselves that are both primal and transcendent. Or maybe they just tap into the depths of their psyche in the pursuit of the profound experiences of connection and release. But no matter what it is, there is a really basic connection. If you've gone to a dungeon, almost every dungeon I've gone to has a quote-unquote altar at its center where they perform their quote-unquote rituals. And this kind of leads me to this next part about the transgression and the taboo. Now, the use of religious imagery in BDSM serves as a potent form of transgression. It does challenge our societal norms and expectations surrounding both religion and sexuality. This act of defiance, if you will, really does go against cultural taboos and adds an extra layer of psychological intensity into our scenes. And as we kind of navigate the boundaries between this pleasure and taboo, for some, it can raise it, and for others, it might be a turnoff. But the allure of these forbidden triggers is a complex interplay here of emotions, responses, and heightening sensations of arousal and excitement, and for some, might even be liberation. For many, this act of transgression itself becomes a source of psychological arousal, and some individuals might revel in the thrill of breaking societal norms and asserting their autonomy over their desires and their identities. Now, this kind of leads me into some of these psychological aspects. Now, at the heart of this intersection between religion and BDSM lies a rich and vibrant psychological dynamic, and it's shaped by centuries of human history, belief systems, cultural narratives. This convergence of two seemingly disparate realms creates a really fertile ground of exploration and self-discovery as people navigate the complexities of their inner worlds in pursuit of deeper understanding and acceptance. And there is a clash between the sacred and the profane. The juxtaposition here of the sacred and the profane gives rise to a complex interplay of emotions and responses. And this can trigger a range of psychological mechanisms and processes. Now, for many individuals, the collision of these two realms elicits feelings of awe, maybe fear or fascination, and some might grapple with the inherent contradictions and paradoxes of the human experience. This tension, though, becomes a catalyst for growth and transformation as people confront their beliefs and their desires and their insecurities with courage and curiosity. And it could be why we are seeing people who do dress up in religious attire, maybe as nuns, or wear outfits of a priest, or all of these even different things. We've even seen in different types of role play people getting dressed up as the proverbial Catholic schoolgirl. All of it has a religious connotation: innocence and purity, command, respect. All of these things are an interplay on things that could be quite impactful to ourselves. But this can, for some, create cognitive dissonance or even an inner conflict. Now, concepts like cognitive dissonance come into play as individuals might find themselves caught between their conflicting beliefs and their desires. And this collision of religious teachings with the taboo nature of BDSM can create a cognitive dissonance that can be both exhilarating and at times maybe unsettling. Participants must navigate this inner conflict with honesty with themselves and some integrity. And it does allow them to confront their fears and doubts with maybe a little bit of compassion towards themselves and some self-reflection, which then can give way to a little bit of healing for ourselves or maybe some empowerment here. Now, the use of religious iconography and BDSM can serve as this tool for healing and empowerment in certain instances. For some, who have experienced maybe trauma or guilt related to their religious upbringing, incorporating some of these religious symbols into their BDSM scenes can be a means of reclaiming their agency over their bodies or their desires. I have spoken with many who have talked about being raised in a strictly religious household where sex was taboo and it was done just for children. And we don't have sex and outside of and it's drilled into some people. Now, by recontextualizing these symbols within a consensual and empowering framework, people are able to rewrite their own narratives, and they can maybe transform these symbols of pain emotionally, maybe even physically, into sources of pleasure and liberation. And it is a way to connect with it to the divine within. For some of us, the use of religious iconography and BDSM becomes a means of connecting to the divine within ourselves and with others. And this ritualistic nature of BDSM scenes, coupled with the symbolism of religious imagery, does create a sacred space where individuals can explore their spirituality in a deeply personal and intimate way. This connection to the divine fosters a sense of transcendence and unity, connection. And as people tap into these depths of their soul in pursuit of the profound experiences of connection and ecstasy, they allow themselves in a way to be set free or maybe even become more deeply connected. I mean, there are a lot of different instances. We can look at it, some of the terminology or some of the honorifics that are used. Yes, my lord. I know these go back to like using lord and lady, but there are these instances where, they are our divine, they are our goddess. All of these things that will create some sort of image of religion for us. And that's a really interesting part of this integration and synthesis for ourselves. Now, ultimately here, the intersection of religion and BDSM does invite us to integrate and synthesize seemingly conflicting aspects of ourselves by embracing this whole full spectrum of the human experience with courage and compassion. By exploring the depths of our psyche and embracing the complexities of these desires that we have, participants inside of the lifestyle can really go on this journey of self-discovery, transformation, maybe a religious awakening, or a religious epiphany. And it does allow them to maybe create a path of healing, freedom for themselves. Maybe it's a return to the divine, or maybe it's a much needed closing of a chapter of the divine within ourselves, or part of a life that we no longer want. But there is a cultural context and interpretation here. And it is important to recognize that the meaning and significance of religious iconography and BDSM can vary greatly depending on the cultural context and the individual's interpretation of those things. What may be empowering for one person may be triggering for another. And that's kind of an important point that I want to sit on. Now, I was raised Catholic. I'm not practicing. Do I believe to some sort of extent? Yeah, I think that there's something there. Do I know what it is? No. I know there's a lot of religions in the world, and that a good majority of this planet believe in some sort of higher power and have some sort of spirituality and faith. That's evident by Christianity, Islam, Hinduism, Buddhism, and all the other different religions that are out there. For me, though, it's not a style of play that's easy for me to be a part of. I don't do religious scenes at all. That's more of a personal context and flair. I'm not against others who do it, but it's much harder for me to watch a scene. I'm not sure if that's because of my upbringing and what I learned. Possibly. Maybe it's a way for me trying to hone a little bit of respect inside of a lifestyle where we are talking about some of the more deviant things we do. But I know what is important is we all have a line that maybe we're not willing to cross, but that's okay. But it is essential for us to engage in some of these open and honest communications. And I tell my friends when they're going to put these scenes on, I don't think I'm going to be a part of it. And they respect that. But this allows us to explore our different beliefs and, expand on our boundaries and allow somebody to, navigate their desires with a lot of respect. I'm not deriding my friends if they want to do it. Sometimes I look at the imagery and it might be quite beautiful, and other times I find it a little harder to swallow. But that's okay because I'm not involved in every aspect of the community. By allowing the different people with different insights and different kinks to have a safe, consensual environment to explore their desires really does empower them to explore this intersection of religion and kink, which for them could very well enrich their experience and deepens their connections not only with themselves but their partners. Now, sometimes people go into much deeper aspects. It's not unlike when we are using floggers. This is something that we can talk about that has a definite connection back to religion with self-flagellation, right? Paying penance, or something else a little bit more that was used in Catholicism and still is used to this day, a silice. Now, this is a device that was historically used as a tool for self-discipline, penance, in a religious context, and it really does hold a profound psychological significance here. And by inflicting controlled pain upon oneself, individuals did seek to atone for their sins and purify their souls. In BDSM, the adaptation here of the silice serves as a similar purpose, and it provides a lot of people with a means of experiencing controlled pain and submission at their own levels. And it can be solitary, meaning it's something they can do with or without the guidance of maybe a dominant or even a submissive in their life. The act of wearing a silice becomes a ritualistic expression of devotion and surrender. And people who willingly embrace the discomfort and pain in pursuit of transcendence and self-discovery maybe do reach higher levels of understanding and philosophical planes. When we look at religious play, people who are engaging in these role-playing scenarios that draw inspiration from religious themes and imagery. And as I mentioned before, portraying a priest, a nun, a monk. These role plays explore the dynamics of authority, confession, absolution, in a consensual and playful context. The power dynamics here are inherent in the religious hierarchies, are maybe reimagined and definitely negotiated as people navigate this whole boundary between sin and salvation, dominance and submission. Through these role plays, people confront their deeper desires and their darkest fears, and they kind of get really into this primal archetype of themselves and these collective fantasies in pursuit of intimacy and connection. At the end of the day, I'm fairly certain people know they're not really confessing to someone. But in that moment, maybe they're just confessing enough. And maybe that's all we need. Maybe that's not what we need. Maybe others find that offensive. But that's what this allows us to do. And I do kind of want to stress a little bit Well, not stress a little bit. This isn't hard for me to talk about because there is no bias here. I'm trying to show the other side of this. Whether I participate in certain activities in a lifestyle or not doesn't mean I have to be biased towards it. I do try to understand these things and point them out because I think others might even overlook them. And for example, I don't know how many people I've talked to when they've gone to a dungeon and they've seen the quote unquote altar in the center of the room have never really thought about its connection to religion and the iconography that it means. I mean, if you walk into a church, the altar is massive. It's this huge, long bench type at the front of the church. Well, when we walk into a dungeon, for the most part, they're usually centered and built right around the altar. And it really is this focal point for all the rituals and ceremonies, the scene setting, and it really does imbue the environment with a sense of sacredness and reverence. These altars become a symbolic space where we explore the spirituality and desires in this whole consensual and empowering way. And I mentioned this before, lighting candles during wax play, or reciting prayers or talking to our dominant in a certain manner, performing rituals of submission and devotion. All of these acts create a sense of connection, create a sense of devotion, and in some essences, create a sense of the divine. What that divine means to us is going to go down to the context of each person. But they would, I imagine, forge a deeper bond between those involved and our innermost self. When we look at all of these things, we can start seeing it's not that hard to connect the dots. And at the heart of these examples lies a really profound exploration of the human psyche and spirit at its best. The adaptation of religious practices and imagery in BDSM does serve as a means of confronting our deepest desires and our fears, our transcendence of societal norms and taboos, what we can and can't do, and reclaims our agency over our bodies and our desires. Now, I'm not saying, and nor do I agree, that, and that's more of a personal take, of people going into actual religious spaces such as a church and doing things that they should be reserving for privacy. I find that, personally, disrespectful because we don't have consent to do it there. And that's a place of worship for many, and doing these things, and I have seen these things done, I don't agree with. But that's my take. What happens to you, I won't know. But, maybe we don't leave certain things to chance. Maybe we do. But no matter what we're doing, we are bridging this whole gap between religion and kink. And as people go along this journey, and as they transform their lives into something more meaningful, and as they build their paths to a better sense of self and feel more liberated, we find a way to really see how all of these things come together in our lives. But I did mention this whole ethical and respectful engagement here. Now, incorporating all of these elements into our BDSM lifestyle requires a foundation of informed consent and mutual respect. We talk about this all the time. And we know we have to understand how we're going to communicate and negotiate. But maybe going deeper and understanding the rituals, the symbols, the activities involved, we have to understand that if I'm against a certain type of scene, I'm not going to be coerced into doing it. I'm not going to be manipulated into doing it. It really is essential when we're getting into something a little bit heavier that might have a deeper context to a lot of people, that boundaries are open and honest, and that we are going to respect each other's autonomy and their own agency. And if this is going to bother someone, or there's going to be some sort of sensitivity related to the whole religious aspects and ceremonies that are going to be put on, well, maybe a pre-warning of a scene, or discussing it with our partner and not just presenting it. I'm not saying, yes, I know what that would mean. That's consent violation. I don't want to jump that far. But it's really about having a lot of autonomy or a lot of care for those around us. even some cultural and religious sensitivity goes a long way. And to me, that would be paramount when incorporating some of these sacred symbols into our BDSM practices. If we think it's essential to recognize and have respect for the diverse nature of what we do inside of the lifestyle, then maybe having a little bit for religious participants, or maybe acknowledging that the symbols may hold different meanings and significance for different people. Maybe avoiding cultural appropriation means engaging in thoughtful consideration and dialogue about the use of symbols and seeking to understand their cultural context before we start using them. We seem to be willing a lot more to disrespect Christianity when we talk about doing crosses and everything else. And I'm just giving an example. I'm not picking on like the St. Andrew's cross, or, turning someone in as a wax figure into a crucifix. But I don't see a lot of people doing the same with religious iconography based on Islam or Hinduism. It might be out there. I haven't found it. But it is good to understand that if we're maybe too afraid or we don't want to disrespect that religion, why are we much more apt or keen to disrespect or draw from, I want to give the balance here, draw from Christianity? We have to be mindful of if we are going to offend somebody with something. And that if they're going to end up being upset and walking away, that we don't take it personally if we are going to do some sort of activity involving a scene like this, or our friends don't want to go to something like this. It's all right. But this all comes from dialogue, communication, and understanding. And if people are going to be willing to share their beliefs and experiences and have their boundaries nice and open, especially without judgment, we have to also respect those that don't want to participate in some of this or see some of this. It is difficult for some people. We don't even have to be overly religious. I haven't set foot in a church in a very long time, but I do know that I struggle when I see some of these scenes. Not because I'm at church every Sunday asking for, somebody to forgive my sins, if I believe in that. But there's something, maybe a tradition or a value I still hold on to that just says, okay, that's your scene. I'm going to step away. Enjoy yourself. I'm just not going to participate in any form by watching or anything else. And that seems to be enough. But at least we are allowing ourselves to have an ongoing reflection and some sort of education about all this, especially when we talk about ethical engagement inside of the lifestyle, because that's what requires reflection about what we've done, what we're going to do, or what we're going to negotiate, and how we're going to educate ourselves on doing these scenes or creating these scenes or what's already been done. Especially, I think, more so when we incorporate the religious elements. And this means being willing to examine our own beliefs and biases. We've got to challenge some assumptions and expand our understanding of diverse religious and cultural practices that are outside of what maybe we know. And if we do a little bit of self-reflection and education, maybe we cultivate a little bit of a bigger awareness and sensitivity to others. And we allow ourselves to enrich our own lives and connect to that spiritual side of ourselves while respecting everybody else's beliefs. Now here, at the heart of this intersection lies a really delicate balance between tradition and innovation, reverence and rebellion. I talked about how people draw upon religious imagery to navigate the complexity of power dynamics and submission and transcendence and the divine within the BDSM lifestyle and our communities as a whole. Looking at things like the Salice to exploration of role play, our self-flagellation and these religious themes, people who engage with these symbols and rituals in a way that challenge the societal norms and expectations is okay. Maybe for them, that's the catharsis to get through. But beyond the realm of pleasure and pain, there lies a deeper truth. The quest for meaning and connection that unites all of us inside. And in the sacred space of the lifestyle dungeons that we all explore or inhabit, these hallowed halls of religious institutions that some of us may attend, we do seek to transcend the confines of the mundane and touch the divine within ourselves and sometimes with others. And it's through these acts of exploration and self-discovery that we come to understand ourselves more fully and embrace the complexities of our desires and our identities with a little bit of courage and a whole lot of compassion for ourselves, because that seems to be the one thing that we sometimes forget. Now, I want to, before I give you my wrap-up question here and kind of close down the show, it's a big topic for me. And like I've kind of mentioned throughout the show, I'm not overly involved one way or another with religion, or I definitely stray away from, and I've been asked, over the years, do you want to do this scene or a nun, or I don't. I have nothing against those who do. Sometimes when I see some things, as much as I kind of maybe wince a little bit, I try to find something positive about it. But there are those moments, and maybe it is a spiritual connection. And I'm not dumping on anybody who does. Please don't think I am. I have explained, hopefully and thoroughly, how this all kind of pulls together, at least on both sides. For those who have been, a couple of questions I got in, I want to get to those real quick. Yes, my book is now in print. It's been out since the beginning of this month. You can order that off of, anywhere you can order a book. Tangled Desires, the intersection between psychology and BDSM, or you can get it on ebook, wherever you get your ebooks from. I do have my new podcast is coming out. It will start in a couple of weeks. That it is, ironically, it's called BDSM, Blood, Death, Sex, and Murder. It's a true crime podcast. I will be covering murders and crime from all over the world that are connected to BDSM in one fashion or another. And some that have connections to some of the social media places that we actually inhabit. And maybe how they've changed policies and how they've done things. So we can get a deeper understanding beyond the crime itself. Some of these crimes have obviously been talked about. Some are a little bit newer. That will launch out soon. That is up. If you want to find it, you can find it on Spotify, and get ready. I'll be dropping the welcome trailer, I'm hoping, later this week, or the introduction. But I want to leave you with a question today, and maybe get a little bit of, maybe I would love to inspire more commentary on this, because I think a lot of people are involved in this. What really are your thoughts of the use of either religion or secret symbols in kink practices? I want to hear from you, because I know there's a large contingent of my followers that are in Europe, and a large contingent of Europe is Catholic, so or Christian, or some sort of religious denomination there. What do you think of it? Is it something you do? Is it a taboo? What? Let me know. Let me know in the comments section. Comment back to me on Spotify. Let me know. Really want to hear from you all. And, again, I don't have any biases towards this. I hope there's no takeaway that I was trying to, be down on this. So a lot to think about, a lot to process. If there's more, if you think that there's something I haven't covered, let me know. If there's somebody who is an avid practicer of doing religious scenes, maybe wants to discuss this live with me, could always do a follow-up episode. Let me know. Reach out to me at thekinkperspective@gmail.com. You can, it's just the whole name of the show, but all together. Let me know that you want to talk about this, that maybe there's something I didn't cover or I didn't give enough depth to, and you'd like to talk about it more. Absolutely. I'll bring you on. I'd love to hear from anybody around the world that wants to talk about this. It helps bring our community together. So, until next time, everybody, be safe and stay kinky.